Hey guys, welcome to Famous Last Words. My name is Evan DeGraff, and I'm the host of your show today. We have a very special guest that will be joining us. And just before we get into the interview, I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. Make sure you guys check out last week's show with Pat Hogue. He's a filmmaker. He's on the PJ Campbell Network. He is one of my favorite people in this space. If you don't love Pat Hogue, then are you really Canadian? Also, just a slate of shows that have been going on. Pat Hogue, our guest today, and Jonathan Youngblood next week. So make sure you guys check that out. And last but not least, Super Smash Bros. Tournament. It is happening. It's a whole fucking league. I'm going nuts with this. It is like something I've been wanting to do ever since I joined the Smash Brothers community, but not in the way how other people do it, because I think that like everyone has different levels of skill in Smash, and I want to be able just to like have some good time, with my friends. So that's kind of that. But with no further ado, there's that. We have to invite our guests on. Rachel Silvestrini.
Oh, hello.
How are you doing?
Just dealing with the roller coaster that was this last like 70, 85 hours. It's been a month this week for sure.
I'm curious. We can talk a little about the Schmoedown because I haven't really had a platform to get into it. Did you ever worry that you're going to get dropped?
No.
No? But it was rather like who's going to be on your team with you and kind of what are the ramifications of that? I think Vanessa's a great pickup. You saw me champagning for Late to the Party in general.
Yeah. No, I love Late to the Party. I think that they were one of my favorite teams. I think they were the best team to balance showmanship and theatricality versus knowledge. Like, I love Shazam, but like they don't dress up, and like Robert and Vanessa would put in so much work to their cosplay. They would perform in character, and they were just a super high caliber team. So I love the fact that we got Vanessa. I love that there's another girl playing with me in the den. That makes me super happy. Not that I didn't love being surrounded by my boys, but still, it's different when you got another girl. So I'm super excited about that. But no, I wasn't worried at all. Knowing that Ben and I are a really good team, I knew that there was no way that Kate was going to break us up. That it didn't even cross my mind, which is like the most weird thing, because I am anxiety prone, and just being like, do people like me? Like, am I supposed to be here? Like, do people want me here? And like, I was just like, no, Kate's like, it wasn't even a thought, which thinking back now, I'm like kind of freaking out why I didn't freak out. So
like, why?
Thanks, Evan.
Why? I'm just curious, because like, you normally we don't see the emotions of someone who gets dropped, especially someone who's competing, because a lot of people who were dropped just weren't competing in general due to other reasons. So I'm really curious, like, and I think everyone that was dropped, it was not for malicious reasons. It was really just because it just didn't work out. Outside of Somerville, that was but okay, you say that, but I would argue Brandon Hanna was dropped in his own right.
No, Brandon was very smartly traded. It's a good move for them. It was a good move for us. We got James White in it. There's a lot of politics that went into that, that decision that were made, behind the scenes. A little bit of it was talked today about on backstage, which I wish that they had pulled Brandon in for, because like they were talking about him when the person that it was talking, or when the person that they were discussing was actually available to comment on it, and they didn't bring him on. Like, that kind of irked me a little bit. But like Brandon's gonna be fine. He's with the Droogs, and don't. No, none of that. This show's about me.
I'm sorry. We're gonna jump into it. I just wanted to hit like
I'm really not like
all the Schmoedown stuff early, because like you said, it was a stressful time, and someone I know that you look up to, Kevin Smith, joined, which is super dope.
I had so many emotional and adrenaline highs yesterday, and so many like just crashes, because like not just Kevin Smith, like Kevin Smith, Chris Jericho, like, oh my God. Doug Benson is so fantastic. I adore him so much. But like all those people that got added, like Scott Mance is back in the Schmoedown, which is super exciting. Scott Mance! He's
Perry's
so great.
Perry was a big one for me. I didn't expect. That made me really happy, because I was a big tough beats guy. I'm sorry that we've revolted your interview talking about that. just
It's
happen.
absolutely fine. No, I love it. Like I love the fact that people are getting involved, but it's also bringing it back to the fact where before we added all of these people, there was just like there weren't enough matches to go around to begin with. So it's like, well, now it's even harder to get a match like since quarantine. So I'm just hoping that, something happens. I hope that people stay home, guys. Stay home. Stay home.
Yo,
And like just let this let the virus take its course, and let's limit the amount of people that get infected by it, and let's stop the spread of it so we can all go back and I can play. I'm just going to be selfish about it. Stay home so I can play Schmoedown, basically. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. It elevated. Schmoedown got elevated yesterday, like 1,000 levels. Our fandom is now going to be mixing super hardcore with AEW, with the Kevin Smith fans. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this, because I'm really hoping that deep down, I'm hoping that Cody Rhodes gets involved, so that we can do a taping at an AEW special and like record it in the ring. I think that
place in Jacksonville would be a great location to have a live show.
Yeah. Well, somebody in the comments mentioned during SEN Live today about how amazing it would be if they could do something on the Jericho cruise, which I have connections at Sixth Man Cruising, and so let's just make this happen. I would love to. Not this year, because I think the cabins are already sold out, but we can see what we can do, and I would love to make that a thing, especially considering how involved Jericho is probably going to, get involved, and just be. I think that Jericho is going to be a huge factor and like tent pole in this force. Like it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, I don't know if this point has been said a lot, but I think people seem to forget that Jericho also did that podcast with Nick Fundy, and that was kind of the whole. That's kind of like how he started out in this world of film, and kind of his big leap almost in that whole cross section. And then obviously their podcast stopped because Chris Jericho found new avenues in wrestling. But now he's back, and I think a lot of that has to do. And I'm gonna shout Nick Fundy. I don't know him too well or whatever, but like he seems like a really great dude, and I'm gonna shout him out because part of the reason why Chris Jericho's here today, we didn't see it then, but we see it now. But this is about you. You talked about your connections, and I want to get into kind of like, how have you gained all these connections? What is the start of you? I think you've shared this before. You tour with theatrical productions doing merchandising.
Mm-hmm.
What's the start of that? I guess we'll go to little Rachel. What makes her fall in love with musical theater, or the whole idea of being a part of something bigger than yourself?
My parents tell me that they would play musical cast recordings for me when I was little, because it's something that got me and my sister dancing and having fun. And apparently when I was 5, I would run around the house singing Dance 10 Looks 3, which is like, just explains so much about me. If you know what that is, it's a song from Chorus Line. It's about a girl who goes to, she tries to get work as a chorus girl, and gets literally rated as dance for 10, but for looks 3. So she goes to a plastic surgeon to get tits and ass. And I was 5 and running around the house singing this song, which my dad thought was hilarious. And my mother was like, no. But somehow they were shocked at the way that I turned out. So,
hey,
parenting. I went to my first show when I was 8 years old, and it was a Chorus Line. And I instantly fell in love. It was just amazing. And growing up, I went and saw Les Mis and Miss Saigon, which both had very heavy messages and, heavy storylines to them. But my parents really, looking back, they really made an effort to expose us to the arts, which I cannot thank them enough for. Like, it didn't feel like it was a big presence in our lives. Like, it wasn't, and I was involved in theater through my church and stuff like that. Like every Christmas, we would, have put on a Christmas pageant, and like growing up, I was usually the lead of it for some reason. Like, I just don't understand. I mean, I used to be able to sing, which was great. And I used to work with a voice teacher, and then I went through high school and was a cheerleader, blew out my voice. And now I can't sing. So
It's so
fun.
funny because I did this. I did Aaliyah's podcast, Aaliyah Moore, from All the
Love
Belts way back in the
her.
day. She's one of the greatest humans. She runs a Blame It on Buffett podcast, and we hit a point where I did gigs when at the age of fucking 12. It was weird. It was awesome, but then
Yeah.
puberty happened, and for someone who I was never professionally taught how to sing, and I it's just something I was against because I'm stubborn sometimes. If you don't know how to navigate through puberty, you get stuck in a rut singing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my voice didn't blow out because of puberty. It was I was a cheerleader for all 4 years of high school. Yes, I understand. It's funny. But watch those T's. Got to keep them level. Shoulders down. Yep. I hate saying this, especially in this day and age, but I was a Nazi about our angles and you don't break your wrists ever. But I mean, I went to a high school where our football team, a good season was 2-9. So I basically had a high school team of bring it on. Like we were highly competitive. We won more trophies than the football team. We looked at the football games as practice for our competitions. It was really funny and really sad when we had to sing the alma mater. They were so sweet and cried. But
would you say that you generally enjoyed high school? Because it's split for people. Like it is a very 50-50 line for like people who enjoyed high school and people who didn't. So
yeah, and it's funny because my older sister didn't enjoy it. So we had a program with our JC, like our junior college, where
in a city or like in a suburban area or like a rural area.
I grew up in San Jose, California. So it's it's the Silicon Valley, so it's very suburban. Like I had a very beautiful childhood, I guess. I grew up in the house that my grandparents bought when they moved from LA up to Northern California with my dad and my uncles. And when they were ready to retire, my parents bought the house from them and moved in. And then I think my sister was like 1 and my mom was like pregnant with me or almost pregnant with me. So I literally grew up in the house that my dad grew up in. I went to the same elementary, junior high, and high school that he did. I had the same teachers that he did. I lived less than a mile from all of my schools, so I could always walk there, growing up, which was amazing. It was a very idyllic childhood. And typical, my parents split when I was 13, so that, ruined me for relationships. Thanks, parents. But like, it's just one of those things that I really loved my childhood. I was a Girl Scout. I was like a state nominated like top 10 cookie seller every year. I played softball growing up. I was highly competitive in sports and but I loved high school. Like I found it really fun. But my older sister, like I was saying, we had our local JC had this program with the high schools in our school district where you would juniors and seniors could apply for this, and you could go to the junior college for your junior and senior year and take the same classes for each year within one semester. And then you had the ability, but you were on college campus, and then you had the ability the other half of the time to take college courses. So that by the time you graduated high school, you would already have an AA. And be able to, and they had a deal with like USC or the CSUs in the UC system to transfer automatically to like some of their colleges. So my older sister did that. My little sister hated high school, ended up dropping out and getting a GED. Wow. And I was a 4-year graduated cheerleader. Like
it's so funny that it's like such a wide range of like paths in high school, because like it's the most graduation rates I would say compared now to what it was then, at least for the areas I've been in, because I moved a lot, are super high compared to what it was. Like it was normal for someone to drop out then. It wasn't looked down upon. Just like, oh, they dropped out. It was just a thing, from my understanding at least. But like now if someone drops out, it's a big deal,
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that, like, talking, about your parents splitting, obviously, but like all three children upon that all had really different lives for the last 4 years of their childhood. That's
Yeah.
mind blowing, but also super cool in a really weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, my sisters and I are very different in very big ways, but also like very similar. Like there's a very strong commonality thread that flows through all three of us, and then everything else is just like completely different.
Right.
But like I loved high school. I like I said, I was a cheerleader for years. I helped choreograph um or I worked on Sweet Charity my junior year. I ended up like, yeah, it was really great. I'm still really good friends with some of my old teachers. Like anytime I go back to visit my mom, I'll go and stop in at the high school or like my junior high, and like stop in and see some of my old teachers. I've come back and spoken to some of their classes, which was really fun. It pissed off some teachers and parents apparently once, because I told them that they didn't need a degree to succeed in life, and you don't do that when you're a nationally ranked academic and academically nationally ranked high school. So that I didn't get invited back for a few years after that.
I also, just really quick, we got a stream live coming in from Ferris. Donate $5. Shout out to Ferris. We'll pop it. He said that he's never been on a cruise before. But the stream live says, awesome people. Sup? What's up with you, dude?
Love
Thanks
you,
so much
baby.
for stopping by. You're like, honestly, I see you everywhere, and I don't know how you do it, but I thoroughly appreciate you literally being everywhere.
Ferris is a boss. He's awesome.
Honestly, Ferris is clutch. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you. And so you get through high school, and you're this all class high school, like, the practically the model student for what someone looks for in a high schooler, for the most part.
Yeah.
We don't have all the details, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
But you decide, okay, we're not going to college. Or no, so yeah, we're not going to college.
Yeah.
We're gonna go tour.
Well, I tried a year at JC, and because I was really wanting to like get out and like actually go to college.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to stay at home for like 2 years and get my AA and then transfer, down to LA or wherever, and just like, finish my adult life. And it was a really weird, because I went to De Anza, which is one of the best JCs you can ever go to, especially in like it's like top 3 in the state of California, which is huge.
Right.
And it again, it was where my dad went. But I went in with the dance program, loved that. But there was a lot of friends of mine that went to De Anza, and I just kind of got sucked into this whole, like it very much felt like Community, like the TV show Community, but without like the super witty banter.
Right.
And more of like the sad Pierce version, where people were literally like, you'd have like 40-year-olds in your class, and they were like, oh yeah, I'm still working on my AA. And I'm like, oh, how long did you start? And they're like, when I was 18. And I'm like, shit. Like Ghost of Future Perfect, Ghost of the Future, like it was terrifying. And so I decided to just stop. Like I decided not to go back the next quarter or the next semester. And I told my parents I was 20, and I was like, I'm moving to LA. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to try and, tour with bands. And during all of this, I was very involved in the music scene in the Bay Area. I started going to concerts when I was, as soon as I was able to get my license and drive my mom's car up to San Francisco, which is like an hour away. Like I was 16 years old driving up to San Francisco by myself, walking the streets at like 2:00 in the morning after a concert, looking for a car. Like that's dangerous. Don't do that. But my parents were like, okay. So I was really involved, and like I became friends with a lot of bands. And then one fateful night in San Francisco, this band that I was really good friends with was like, hey, can you do us a favor? Our merch guy's really sick. Can you watch the table while we perform, and then we'll come back and like whatever. they're like, don't worry about selling anything. Like, just tell them to come back after the set. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that sounds boring. So I sit behind the table. They come back an hour after their set because they were loading their stuff, and there was nothing left. And I had sold everything, which was great because they had the money then, but also not great because then they didn't have any merch for the next like 3 shows while they were trying to get something like shipped in last minute. But after that, my name started getting passed around to venues in case, you know, anybody, if that happened to anybody else. And then you just meet bands and hang out and your friends. And then I decided to move to LA, and I wanted to work for a record label at the time that was really big in the scene. It was called Drive Through Records. They had they had something corporate and Hello Goodbye and Hidden in Plain View, Newfound Glory. I think Count the Stars was on that. It was a really great label at the time, and all of my favorite bands were on it. It was super hard to get an internship with them, but I decided to move down here regardless. And I felt like I love LA. I would spend every summer down here growing up because a lot of my extended family lives down here.
Right.
And so I was very comfortable living down here. My roommates were great. It was just a tragic existence. You know, we were like 5 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment in the valley, and like,
hey, look, out there, from everything I gathered, especially with my interview with Hogue last week, it's sometimes you just kind of gotta go for it, and it's not the most fun in the world, but when you're there, it apparently it's nice. But with that, I just want to shout out Ferris one more time. I donated another $5, saying, you know what, Evan, I appreciate you, man. Thanks, man.
that's so sweet.
Ferris is the GOAT. So you found your footing with bands, and you're working to get this internship. You moved to LA. You're crammed, which sounds about on brand as on brand as LA can get.
Pretty much,
I'm so afraid for the day that I haphazardly decide to go to LA, make some really bad choices, and get stuck there like everyone else. But like, you're there. What is your like next step? What are you moving towards at this point?
I just wanted to get on tour at that point. I wanted to sell merchandise on tour for a band. So I started, I ended up meeting a few bands that I became really good friends with and like would do mini tours with, like up and down the coast, from San Francisco to San Diego. And then eventually one of them, we did like a mini tour of California. And then we did a mini tour on our way to Austin for South by Southwest and did a few showcase shows, and then did like a mini tour on the way back, I think. Or we just drove back. I can't remember. It was a very long time ago and probably pretty exhausted. And then I ended up meeting Kevin Lyman at a bar in Hollywood at the Viper Room for a nonprofit kickoff party for Warped Tour. For those who don't know, Kevin Lyman created Warped Tour. He is the reason that the touring industry was what it was back then and brought you your favorite music, basically. What?
Can I ask you around what year this was?
This was 2005. Yeah, it was 2005 because I ended up standing shoulder to shoulder with him watching some like all-female Japanese punk band.
Hell yeah.
That were amazing. And we ended up talking, and I had just gotten my massage therapy license. And I had told him that I had this idea because I know that they had this tent called Reverse Daycare where parents could get dropped off by their kids to hang out at during Warped Tour. So that like, if you had like a 12 or 13-year-old kid and like them and their friends wanted to go to Warped Tour, you wouldn't have to just drop them off. You could be there for them in case they wanted or needed anything. So like, you would
Warped Tour, like from everything I've got from Warped Tour, because I have some friends that went. I never went because I was never into the bands at the time. I think that like,
that's fair.
Looking back, I'm gonna be like, Evan, you should probably just go for the experience. But I never ended up going. But it is a day and a half. It is very edgy. Is not the right word, but there's a very certain brand that's there. Alternative, yeah. But 12 and 13-year-olds, it's good for them to see, but like they shouldn't be alone there, if that makes any sense.
I mean, it's an incredibly safe environment Like everybody watches out for each other, but like,
Mhm.
you know, if you're in the mosh pit and you don't see a 12-year-old and you accidentally hip check them to the ground, like that's not a good look. So,
Yeah.
Kevin made it available for parents, I think, that were escorting kids under a certain age, that the parents would get in for free, and they would literally just like hang out in reverse daycare, which was a completely enclosed tent. It had air conditioning, unlimited cold water. We had a TV, and they would show movies all day, and you could like use that as like a home base and be like, okay, so I'm going to be here. Come check in with me at, you know, you'd get there at noon and be like, check in with me at 2, check in with me at 5, and then I'll come with you. Like I'll see you at 5, and you know, because that's when basically the tent would shut down. So it was really great and it was fun. So I broached him with an idea to have a massage therapist in reverse daycare available for the parents with like a chair massage. Do like $1 a minute. He really liked the idea, but he was like, I don't know if it'll work, so I'm not going to like ask you to come on tour.
Right.
But if you're going to be at any of the California dates, let me know and we'll, you know, hook you up, and, you know, we'll get you in and you can set up and we can figure out if this works and if we want to keep doing this. So I was floored. So that summer, my best friend Jessica, shout out, God, I love her so much. Jessica and I, who was also a photographer at the time, Jessica and I decided to follow Warped Tour through California.
Right.
I think in like the 6 days that we were driving across, like literally up and down the coast of California, like all over. In those 6 days, I think we maybe got like 14 hours of sleep.
Sounds right.
Maybe each. Yeah, it got bad. Like there were times when we would be driving and like we would hallucinate and force project people on the road in front of us as we're driving. It got bad. I do not recommend this. Do not do this. It is highly dangerous. But we were driving all over the place, and she would get in. Like we would literally pull in and park by the buses, and you know, wait in line for showers afterwards with everybody else who worked, and she would get in and we'd get her a photo pass so she could go photograph the bands all day, and I'd be in reverse daycare, and she had a spot to come and kick back and like cool off, and we would share like really awful meals if we got our hands on food ever. And then California came to an end. Our last stop was Sacramento, and Kevin came by while we were setting up, and he pulls me aside and he just goes, I've literally had parents track me down to tell me how much they like having you in there. And like not just like random parents, but like there were some parents that would come back like year after year. Like they would have brought their like kid when they were 10, and now their kid is like 17, and the parent still comes just because there's like maybe one band that they want to see, because there's always like some old school band on the tour.
Blink
And they would
82
just
comes around every now and then.
Yeah, and they would just come and like hang out in reverse daycare and like make sure they went and saw the one band, and that was it. There was literally 4 moms in Fresno that their kids were like in their mid-20s, but the moms met in reverse daycare and would just come back every year. They were my favorites. I love them so much. They were like just this little like group of like little old lady hens, and just I adored them so much. But like he had people like that tracking him down and being like, we really like Rachel in there. She's great. She helps out. Like the girl who was running the tent, like, you know, was able to like get a break and like go get food and all this stuff. And so he goes, if you can find a spot on a bus, you can stay. If you can't, he goes, you have until the end of the day to find a bus, like a spot on the bus. Like just come back and let me know if you found a spot. Because at that point the tour had already been going and bunk spots were scarce. So I had to find somebody who was willing to like let me ride on their bus for free, which is outrageous because it's usually like $100 a night.
Right.
So I spent all day like running around talking to people, seeing who had space on their bunks and in their bus. And it got to be like 4 o'clock. And I was like, you know what? It's not going to happen. Like, I'm going to call it. I'm going to go find Kevin. And I went to the production office and talked to the tour manager. And she and I sat down, and she was like, Kevin's not here right now, but I'm going to talk to you. If you can't find a spot, we can't have you stay, but we want you to come back next year. And I was like, what? What? Like, it was the best no I've ever gotten in my life.
Right.
So that night we drank heavily. We got a hotel room. We showered. Like, we had like hour showers each because Jessica and I were so exhausted. We passed out for like 15 straight hours. I think we like finally left the hotel at like 3. Yeah. Sorry about that. And then we drove back to LA and it was amazing. And then I never, a lot of things in my life happened because of the next 2 things that I did. I followed up with an email thanking him for the opportunity. And then I emailed him about every 8 to 10 weeks after that.
Right.
I remained persistent. I remained, at the forefront of his mind. It was really easy too, because the tour, I left the tour. I thanked him for that. Then the tour ended like 7 weeks later, and I was like, congratulations on such a great tour. Like, go enjoy your, like, I hope you are going and enjoying your time off right now. And then like, I think I left it until Thanksgiving, and I emailed him wishing him and his family happy Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then New Year's. And then they start staffing again in like February to April. And so I like literally sent him a message and I was like, hi, I don't know if you remember, but you said to stay in contact. And, if I'm still available, I just wanted to see, talk to you about like, the whole bringing me on for massage therapy and reverse daycare. And he called me about a week later. Or no, I sent him another email a week later as a follow-up because I hadn't heard from him. And he responded back and he was like, I'm going to call you in 5 minutes.
Yep.
And I was like, right. Okay. Didn't expect that. So he called me, we talked about it, and he goes, so this is what I propose. If I can find a spot, because he's like, I'm working out the production bus layout right now. And he goes, if I can find an open bunk for you, we'll cover your bunk spot. We'll cover catering. And then you keep everything you earn, which is outrageous because like everybody basically gives like a cut, like all of merchandise and all of sales, like all of them give a cut to the production. Yeah. And he was basically like being like, hey, you get to come out and hang out for free. Oh, wait, no, you get to keep all the money you earn. And I was like, oh, okay. So then about like an hour later, he calls me and he goes, we have a bunk spot you're on. Expect an email from Kate and she'll get all your details. And I was like, okay. Hung up the phone and screamed my lungs out. It was amazing. And then that led to an incredible blurry time in my life where I got to meet some of the most amazing people, and I got paid. Like, it started my life of living on the road, and it was amazing. And I met some of my favorite people in the world, and you meet people and you live through the best and worst times on those summers together, and it really bonds you, like to the point where there are some people that I haven't physically seen in like a decade that I know if I was still touring and in their town, we would go and hang out for a beer and it would be like no time had passed.
Right.
Just because those are the relationships that you get on Warped Tour.
Yeah, for sure. And and I think the second thing that I think you're about to talk about is you're in Warped Tour, and like Warped Tour is this really weird beast. It exists for very good reasons because like it helped boost indie bands when they needed that boost, especially when they got signed on and they were able to like go to place to place to place. So now different times would just hear them outside of this really underground grunge band outside of Seattle or whatever. Mm-hmm. But now what I'm more so curious about, which I think is fair, is how you got into theater through this. Or am I skipping a beat here?
No, you're not skipping a beat at all. So working on Warped Tour was incredibly hard, and it's incredibly hard on your body and emotionally. Like you're going 1,000 miles an hour for days on end. You're treating your body like complete trash. You're not sleeping. You're drinking too much. You're out in the sun.
I didn't want to say this to make it sound bad, but like it's true at this point. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like it's literally sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, at the very beginning and when you're in your 20s, yes. The longer you're on Warped Tour, the less sex and less drugs you do because your body can't handle it. And also it's just like, no, I'm fine. I've been there, done that. I'm good. Yeah, it was great. I worked like 7-8 years on Warped Tour, off and on, sometimes full tours, sometimes, as a relief, sometimes like a week or so. But every year was different and every year was the same. And so being able to put that on a resume when you apply for other tours is invaluable because the people who know what Warped Tour was know how hard it is. And if you come back and you keep getting asked back, that says so much more about you than any recommendation you could get from anyone.
Right.
So I found an opening for Beauty and the Beast, the Broadway tour. And it said, it was like a job post and it said, tour retail assistant tour retail manager. And I was like, that sounds like a fancy word for merch girl. So I applied, I sent my resume in. I didn't hear from them for a while. And then
Disney is so bad at that. Like you'll send in because I've been applying for internships. You'll send in an internship and you won't hear anything for months.
Well, I mean, especially with this job because they tend to hire from within, which is great because it's a big company and people want to stay with the company but change their job or advance or whatever. And I get it, like, but like, because it is a job and because they are Disney, they do have to like open it up to the public. That offering was I actually heard back from them about a month later, which I guess is fast. But they were also in the middle of dealing with like a whole bunch of other stuff that I did not know at the time. So like I was expecting like a quick response when that never happened. But basically I went through this excruciating interview process with them. Excruciating because there was not a lot of communication being sent to me about it. So I would do an interview and they'd be like, that was great. We really like you. You'll be hearing from this person soon to set up the next stage of the interviews. So go ahead and like be expecting this email from this person. And I'm like, okay. And then like 2 weeks would go by and I'd be like, did they misspell my email? Like, so I would have to like approach them and be like, hey, is this still happening? Like, I don't want to, step on any toes or whatever, but like, I really want this job. And that continued for like 3.5 months.
It's the worst. It's the worst tango ever. It is like the tango that you don't want to have.
It's a very delicate balance between staying in contact and stalking. So you have to walk that line very finely. But they did an amazing thing. And I mean, at the end of it, I got a response. I did not know that because at one point I had contacted the woman who ended up being my boss about it. And I was just like, hey, if you hired somebody else, like I'm happy for you. I hope they work out. But if they didn't, can you let me know? Because I'm just like sitting here, like twiddling my thumbs, just waiting for a response. And she was like, we're waiting to hear back from the lawyers and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Apparently what had happened was somebody had to leave on medical leave and they were needing to, they had like bumped up their assistant to the job of manager and they were trying to fill that assistant role that he had previously filled. And so they were waiting to hear back from legal if they could do that while he was on medical leave or something weird like that. Yeah. But they didn't say that. And all I heard was they were waiting to hear back from their lawyers. And I was like, what popped up in my background check? Like, I don't have a record. So that was fun. So at the end of it, they found out they couldn't hire somebody new. They had to like handle it within. So at the end of like this 4-month process, I basically get a thanks, but we can't response from them. And I was like, all right. They're like, we love you. We would love to have you come work for us. Like as soon as something opens, we'll be in contact. Like if that's okay. And I'm like, of course that's okay. And then I hung up and I was like, yeah, that and a dime.
What's so funny, but even in those situations, it's so hard to trust that they'd actually get back to you because you're like, we've been playing this dance for like 4 months, and now you're saying thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
And you're saying we'll get in contact with you if anything opens up. But are you really gonna do that?
Yeah. Well, the issue was that they were at the time they were in the process of opening Sister Act on Broadway. And so they were
Right.
dealing with like launching a new show and like all the legalities behind it, because they had like it was like an acquired property, and so they had to like go through licensing. And so I get it that they were like, I get it now looking back, like, and finding out about it after the fact, but like during the time I was like, just fucking email me back.
Right.
But then I end up getting a call. It was actually pretty amazing, because I got that answer from them in like April of 2011. And then in July of 2011, my dad passed away. And about a month later, he passed away at the beginning of July. And then at the beginning of August, I had gotten contacted by the woman who, her name is Alyssa, who would be my boss. And she's like, hey, the position's opened. Here's the deal. If you want to interview for it, we need somebody to be like, we need to hire somebody in like the next 2 weeks. And then you need to be able to be in Rochester by this date. Yeah. Like it was like, we have 2 weeks to interview, and then another week to hire. And then you have until like, you have to be able to be in Rochester by like September 10th.
Right.
And I was like, that's in like 3.5 weeks. And I was living in Nashville at the time.
Oh, you're in
called
Nashville?
I was living in Nashville. Yeah. I had moved to Nashville. I was living there for about 1.5 years. I love Nashville. It was
so it's funny because I lived in Chattanooga for 2 years.
Oh, the Pickle Barrel.
So the city's really cool. The
Yes.
city's really dope, but everything around that city is super like, when you think about like pretty like the most like stereotypical Tennessee, that is it. And we lived in the suburbs because it's cheaper, whatnot.
But it's
And it was
beautiful.
bad.
It's so beautiful.
It's great, dude. The mountains are awesome, and the thing is great. But I only went to Nashville once or twice when I lived there, and so I know I will be visiting Nashville. I think sometime next school year. When I think of years in school right now, it's easier that way. Next year, I'm really excited for that because I actually now get to see it as an adult. Do some fun things in the town. So interesting that you live in Nashville. Sorry for the tangent, but
you're totally fine. But I was living in Nashville. I was actually doing a temp job, like a 2.5 week temp job in Cincinnati. So I was technically in Cincinnati when I get the call, and I called my mom immediately, and I was like, "Hey, I have a really good feeling about this." My mom in California, and I was like, "Hey, I have a really good feeling about this. If I get the call and I get hired, can I move my stuff back to California and like leave it at your place? Because I don't want to put it in storage, and I'd rather like pay you rent instead of like pay for storage." And so I went through the entire interview process all over again with the same people I had previously talked to, which was really fun because I literally was talking to them. And I'd be like, "So how are your kids? How they like the rest of school? Like, are they enjoying their summer? Like, are they sad to go back to school?" And like, it was just a really fun kind of like, "How's your mama?" And then at the end of it, I hadn't heard from anybody. I also had the most embarrassing experience with Skype, because I had to do everything. All of my interviews were over the phone until I had to do a face-to-face interview with who would be my manager, Michael, and who would be my boss, Alyssa. And because I had talked to both of them, and they wanted to do an interview together with me over Skype. And I had never used Skype before. And so I'm at the temp job, and like I had told my manager like everything that was going on. I'm like, so if I have to disappear for a little bit, like I'm on the phone, and I told her that I need to do a Skype interview at lunch, and she's like, "Oh, just use my office, close the door. I'm going to go out for a long lunch. Just text me when you're done." I'm like, "You are the nicest woman ever." So I sit down, I'm all dressed up and super nervous and try not to sweat through my clothes.
Sounds right.
And I get on and we're talking and it's great. And everybody's talking over each other because we're just having so much fun and laughing and everything. And then I said something that was really funny. And all I saw were their faces like this. And I was like, oh God. Because like I said it and I was like, yeah. And then their faces were still. And I was like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. And then they started laughing. I did not know that there was like a 3-second delay. So for those 3 seconds, I had died. And I was like, oh my God, I just shot myself in the foot.
What's even crazier looking back, like now that like Skype has updated so much, things like Discord, even Streamlabs, the technology has changed and like evolutionized so much to like, what did it say? Like we can carry a conversation, not have to talk over each other. And I think that's fucking incredible.
Or like you don't have to wait for the person to be done. Like you can talk over each other. It's not going to, freeze the system or anything. But so then like I got told that a few days later I should expect a call one way, like that, Michael would be or that they would be calling one way or the other. So it was my last day in Cincinnati and or the night before my last day in Cincinnati, and I was freaking out because I hadn't heard anything. I was out at a bar with a friend of mine that I had made while I was in Cincinnati. And all of a sudden my phone rings and it's Michael. And it's like 9 o'clock in Cincinnati, which means it's 10 p.m. in New York. And I'm like, well,
he is grinding out there in New York.
Yeah. I'm like, well, like it was Michael. And I was like, well, this isn't good. It's 10 o'clock. At least I'm already at a bar so I can just get sad drunk and whatever, which that's drunk. Not a good way to deal with your emotions, kids. And so I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, and he's like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a little sad. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because it's 10 o'clock at your time and that can't be good. He's like, actually, I wanted to call you and I forgot I hadn't yet. And I wanted to offer you the position. And I like just broke into tears and cried in a bar and bought the bar around, which thankfully there was like 4 people in it. Because I was broke and not making that Disney money yet. And it was amazing. So I had 10 days from that point to drive back to Nashville, pack everything up, drive it back cross country to California, unpack my stuff, return the trailer, set everything up, do laundry, repack, and get to Syracuse or Rochester or wherever. I think it was Syracuse. Yeah, get to Syracuse, New York. 10 days to do all of this. So that was hectic. I did it and it was amazing. And then I ended up working for Disney for 5 amazing years. That is, if I could go back to working for them, I would do it in a heartbeat. I love that company. They took such incredible care of us and just was really amazing to work for them. They have the best healthcare of any company I've ever worked for. And also it's such a prestigious company that really, really cares about the people that, work for them and who patronize or are patrons of them. Like it was a magical experience.
It feels, from my understanding, because obviously I lived in Tampa for 4 years and I had some friends who worked for the company at the park, obviously, which is a little different, but you get the idea. Yes. They will work you to death. You are going to work.
Oh yeah.
But you're getting rewarded for your work. And it feels like you're getting rewarded for your work.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily always feel like that on tour, like in the moment, just because tour life is incredibly hard. And it was actually really funny during the interview process. The first time, one of the women, she was so sweet, but she was like very much like had lived a very like, God, this sounds so awful, but she has, it sounded in her voice like she hadn't really lived a big life and that she had like, gone to college and then like got married and like had some kids and worked for Disney. And she sounded just very like, she was a very sweet woman. Oh my God, she was wonderful. She worked in HR. I adored her. But she sounded very like kind of sheltered a little bit. And so when I was interviewing with her, she was like, so what's this on your resume? Warped Tour. And I described it to her and she goes, that sounds awful. And And I'm like, well, it's really hard. And she goes, but you did this multiple times. And I'm like, yeah, like it's a job, but it's also a family. And it's amazing. And if you don't hire me, I'm gonna try and find a job on it this year. And she goes, oh no. So it was really sweet. And so she kind of understood that background part of it. But then they were talking to me about the schedule, because while Disney does have like these amazing tours like Aladdin and Frozen and The Lion King used to sit down in places for like 3 months at a stretch. Like they did 3 months in Hawaii in the winter. Like, F you guys. We hated that team. We loved them, but we were like so jealous of their schedule. Whereas our schedule for beauty was split weeks and like one-offs. So we'd be in, I think the least amount of time we were ever in a city was like 10 to 14 hours. Like we rolled in, loaded in, did the show, slept, left at like 6 o'clock in the morning to go to our next city. So we were moving and hustling. And so when they were like, the big part is that we need to find somebody who's okay with the schedule. And I'm like, do I get to sleep in a bed every night? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, do I get access to a shower? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, then I'm fine. And she's like, that's your base? I'm like, yeah, that's a high point for me. She's like, all right, great. So we, it was a rough tour. It was a rough, hard, long 5 years. But then you'd get like, no matter how tired you are, you're at the theater, you could have rolled in late and like still be sweating from setup, and doors opened early, and the theater puts you in a bad corner or whatever, and like everything could have gone wrong. And then you see this little girl walk up to you dressed up as Belle or one of the other princesses with these big sparkling eyes, and you call them princess, and they like get excited, and your heart just melts, and everything's fine, everything's good in life. And it's just like,
it's funny. The one thing that you and I have talked about off air was that like you are the only line that people directly talk to. You are the sole representation of the show outside of the ushers. When people talk, when people are like, what is the show, or they want to know, they don't actually get to talk to people outside of merchandise.
Yeah.
And we
were the what did I used to say? I used to say that we were the most underutilized promotional team. Like merchandise is your marketing team. It is your promotional team. Because, and I hate to say it, but we can kill a show if we wanted to. Right. Like if we're not being treated well, or somebody in the cast has an attitude with you, it's not outside the realms to think that they can talk to guests about it. It's not very professional, but you can do it to make a point.
Or you could just start acting like it's a whole asshole in general. And
yeah, like, I have gotten reports from different. Like there are sometimes that we would roll into theaters and they would just be like, we were in where were we? We were in like Cincinnati, I think, for like 3 weeks. And when we left, we broke down all of our, I love Cincinnati. It's fine. And when we left, we broke down like, merchandise gets a ton of shipments, and we have a bunch of boxes, and that goes into our office. And at the end of it, we literally broke down all of our boxes and like put them very neatly into like other boxes, and made it very easy for their custodial team to take them out and recycle them. And when we went to turn in our keys, the house manager was like, we went into the merch booth, or we went into the merch room, and you guys had broken like, are you guys supposed to do that? And I was like, well, we do, because I don't like to leave places with a ton of work. And they literally, like, she hugged me, because apparently there was a merch team with another show that left, like, this was like a 20 to 30 foot deep room, and they had left it 2/3 filled, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, with unbroken down boxes. And it took them like a day and a half to break everything down and get rid of it. And she was like, thank you for doing that. And so like you leave an impression wherever you go with whatever you do. People are going to remember. They may not remember you, but they're going to remember what you did. And so I always liked to, and you know, you work for Disney, you represent the company. Like when you think of Disney, you think Mickey Mouse, you think, you know, the most magical place on earth. And like, you don't want that to be ruined for somebody because you had a bad day. So it was very important to me to leave people with like a good feeling about not just the show, but like the company, because, you know, you hear Beauty and the Beast and you instantly think Disney, but Disney wasn't producing the show. It was another production company.
Right.
So it's like, and it was just one of those things that like, we had to have, I remember having to sit down and talk with one of our Belles multiple times because she was dating our Gaston. And on Saturdays and Sundays, we would have 2 shows. So between shows, she just like the actors wouldn't wipe off their stage makeup because then they would just have to reapply it. And it's really rough on your skin to do that like every week and every day. So people would go out for dinner between like cast would go out to dinner between shows together. But because Belle was dating our Gaston, I would have little girls come up to me at the evening show and be like, I thought Belle didn't like Gaston. And I would be like, what? He's like, I saw them kissing. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, I'd have to like go backstage and have like a CTJ conversation with them and be like, guys, if you want to kiss, take off the makeup or don't do it in public. Like, they're like, nobody sees this. And I'm like, I get little girls every day coming to me telling me that they're seeing Belle kiss Gaston. So like, stop.
Hey, Belle fucked up with the Beast, and I will stand by that.
What?
I'm kidding. I love Beauty and the Beast. It's my favorite Disney film. I think the stage production is actually really beautiful. Like, it's so good. But we need to move on because we're tailing towards the end. But I have one last thing that we need to cover before we go to our last segment.
For sure.
How did you get in this fucking community? That's what I want to know.
Oh, wait, in the Schmoedown community?
Yeah.
So I was on tour. So after Beauty closed, my best friend was working for another company that used to do like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer like kids stage tour, and they also do Broadway shows. And they were doing American in Paris. So American in Paris was getting ready to go on the road, and they needed somebody to run their merch. Just so happens the same time I was getting off Beauty. So I ended up getting hired for American in Paris, and we ended up being in LA during WonderCon 1 year in 2017. Okay. And right around my birthday, because my birthday is in April. And so as a birthday present, my best friend, Jessica, who also progressed into selling merchandise on tours, and her and my assistant banded together to give me some days off so that I could go to WonderCon. I discovered the Schmoedown through that, stayed in contact with everybody, kind of became part of the community because I'm pushy and vocal. And then did you just roll your eyes?
You know it. You know it. You know.
Self-aware. I understand. But I ended up like, I think what got me really into it was I love dogs. And
they would have dogs in the studio. I haven't been to the studio, but I know they always have dogs there.
Well, the 2 that were very prevalent at that time were Cal and Kirk, and neither of them are with us.
I'm not crying today.
I know. I don't want to cry either. But I bonded with eye contact. Like every time PJ would post a picture of Cal, I would just be like, I need to pet your pup.
Yeah.
Like, what'd I say?
You said Cal.
Oh, sorry. No, every time he posted a picture of Kirk, I would be like, I need to pet his belly. Like, I need to snuggle with your
for the viewers at home, the Schmoedown is just a movie trivia show. For those of you guys who don't know, just go at Schmoedown. PJ Campbell is the head question writer for it, and his dog in this case was Kirk. Kirk has sadly passed.
And if you look at the logo, if you look at the logo in the top left corner, that's Kirk.
And then also Mark Riley was a heavy competitor in the competition.
He still is.
He still is. When I think Mark Riley, I think like those the single days.
Yodi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yodi. I'm a Schmoedown boomer. That's what I like to call myself. Uh, it's true. But Cal was big, like really relevant. I know in Mark's life, and just and Mark
Cal was
Cal
his,
sadly passed.
Cal was his baby.
But yeah, just to
But
give you guys some context for those of you guys who
yeah,
aren't like, well versed in this community, but I just want to like
fair
get
enough.
that out.
But so Cal was a corgi, or Cal was a yellow lab, and Kirk was a corgi, and I love dogs. So anytime that they would post pictures, I would be like, "Oh my god, I need to steal your dog," which is a very creepy comment coming from a stranger because I hadn't met neither PJ nor Mark, and so. Kirk sadly passed before I met PJ, and when I met PJ, I met PJ when I moved back down to LA and started going to the Schmoedown tapings, and we would hang out, and he would have little gatherings at his apartment, and he very kindly would invite me over, and we became really good friends and realized that we were basically the same person. Like we're siblings without having any sort of blood relation. Like that is my brother. I love him to the death of me and beyond. And so it's a family. Like once you're in, and you just meet everybody, and everybody's so sweet and generous. And that's how we met. And that's how I met Chris Clark. And that's how I met Patrick Hogue, who I love. Oh, my sweet Canadian. He's such a sweet boy.
Look at that man's. Just
look
at
how handsome he is.
He's
such a sweet baby. I love him. And like people are just super supportive, and everybody's there for each other, and it's just this amazing family that like it's so pure in its ridiculousness. And I just
Drew, really like on brand for Evan not to be pushy is what an opposite role. Yeah, you're not wrong. I'm one of the most pushy people I know. It's just funny to see someone else in this community who's equally as pushy, which is fine. Sometimes you got to weasel your way in there for better or worse.
Yeah, no, I don't care. I'm a bully in the best possible way. Yeah. I'm also fiercely loyal. So like when people speak ill about the community or about any of my friends, I'm like, you obviously don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, that's how I got in, and I feel very blessed to have this in my life. It's actually the reason why I moved back to LA after An American in Paris was done. I could have kept touring. I didn't want to. Could have moved out anywhere in the world, but like this is where my family is. Like, PJ was here, and the Schmoedown, and my roommates. I met Alex and Brandon because of the Schmoedown, and like, who does that? Like, it's so weird. Positive bully.
So that kind of brings us to our last point. So I had this segment that I'm no longer prepping my guest about because fuck that. It's the name of the show, Famous Last Words. I do what I can to keep it as open-ended as possible because I like the varied answers that I get, and I'll surprise you with what I would say are my famous last words at the end of the show. And it's like different week to week. But for you, what would be your famous last words? Either in like what are actually famous last words, like words of wisdom, or even in like some whack shit situation. What were your famous last words before it went nuts? Put you on the spot.
Shit. I think famous last words, because in my mind, famous last words are either it's what you're known for,
right? And
I think I'd rather be known for a feeling than by words. Okay. And so I think that my parting feeling or sentiment to anybody is just, I hope you know how much I love you.
Oh, that's wholesome.
I'm super passionate, and I'm super extra, and I feel things 110%, and I do things 110%. I'm sure you've been at the end of this, but anytime I say goodbye to anybody, I tell them I love them, because especially in the life that I've lived, I've had so many friends of mine pass away sporadically and randomly just because, their tour bus took a turn too sharp, or, there was an outburst at a bar and they ended up, accidentally getting stabbed, or, a friend tragically passed away in his sleep at 25 and like no one knows why. So like I just feel like everybody, especially in this day and age, just tell the people you love them. Like it doesn't have to be like a sit down, hold their hand, stare into their eyes, and like, have that like incredibly emotional heart to heart. But like when you're talking, like my friends and I say we love each other all the time because we actually do. It's not those aren't words that I take lightly. And so like I tell the boys, I'm like, love you. They're like, I'm like, shut up. Tell me you love me. Tell me you love me. Hear the words. But I think that, or I love the famous last words of hold my beer. Because you never know what's coming after that. It could be a trip to the bathroom, or it could be like, watch what I can do, which hardly ever leads to a good conclusion. But yeah, I think those are my favorites.
So my famous last words, based on the conversation that we've had today, and I've had these planned for a while because I've talked to you about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I like to get really solemn, and I don't know why. It's usually like a sad famous last words, but we're here for anyways. So practically, for all y'all at home, I did high school theater. I was a techie. I went hard in the paint. And all my friends around me who were my age, my grade, they were all stage managers, and I hadn't gotten my shot yet. So I walk in and I talk to my teacher. She's the troop director. She does the whole fucking thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go up to her and I'm like, so when is it my turn to be stage manager? Or it was something like that. And those are my famous last words, because the following incidents, it launched a freaking stage managing competition, and it literally everything went to shit. And look, sometimes your famous last words can be good or bad. When I look at famous last words, I always look at it at a situation and see how you can carry it further. And I think in that point in time, I could have been a little more careful with my approach, or even a little bit more stern. I wrote that really weird middle line that you shouldn't sometimes, Yeah,
don't be ambiguous, guys. Make your feelings known.
Yeah. So look,
but also have the grace to accept an answer or a situation go a way that you don't want it to, or did not expect it to.
But and here's a good thing. And what I've taken away from that is after that I quit theater, but literally the year after that, senior year of high school, I joined yearbook and I became business manager like that, for outside just pure passion and pure, whatever. So with that, Rachel, I thoroughly appreciate you being on today. I could hear you talk hours and hours about your ridiculous stories. Yes, I'm gonna use your word ridiculous stories about you touring, and you and you and your outlandish personality out in the Schmoedown right now. The Den is doing things I don't know if I agree with, but they exist, and it's good that they exist. It's good to stir the pot sometimes. So
it is. I will say this, guys. Not parting words or famous last words, but advice. Always take your shot. Always ask the question. Always stand up for yourself. Because anytime you don't ask a question, the answer is always no. And you never know that if you ask the question, the answer could be yes. So that's literally the reason why my life has turned out the way that it has, because fuck, people have said yes to me in the most ridiculous ways that I never ever could have imagined why or how they could have said yes, but they have, and it's led to where I am now. So take your shot.
Remember that RB3 meme that went around where he was holding the freaking whiteboard? I think I had one of the best ones. It literally just said, shoot your shot.
Yeah. Always shoot your shot. Always take your shot.
Shoot your shot. So with that, where can the good fellas find you, Rachel?
You can apparently find me here on the PJ Campbell Network. for the next like 6 months. I'm doing a ton of stuff with you guys. I just recorded suddenly soundtracks for Phantom of the Paradise, which if you haven't seen it, it is a crazy musical. Highly recommend it. It's so weird and outlandish. Yeah, I never heard of it, which shocks me because it's a Brian De Palma movie that I had never heard of. Like, not just like, oh yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Like, never heard of. I thought we were doing Phantom of the Opera. Kind of similar, but not. And then Thursdays, you can find me on my YouTube channel. I do a show called Movies, Music, and Mayhem. This week, I have Mark Yodi Riley as my guest. It's going to be at 7:30 Pacific Daylight Time. Tune in, ask your questions, send in your Streamlabs. First 10 are guaranteed to be asked or talked about. And then you can find me on Twitter and Instagram right here at RM Silvestrini. And then I am all over guesting and appearing on places. So just keep an eye on my face, or keep an eye on my Twitter and my Instagram, and you'll see where I am. And it's so much fun. I love this. I love coming on and talking to you. Like, Evan, you're such a sweet boy, and I just adore you.
I do what I can to, like, my main mission is like keep things pretty open and comfortable. It's kind of my goal in the community right now during the Evan Renaissance, as I like to call it, because if you know anything about like 2017 Evan, it was a mess. But anyway, thank you so much, Rachel. I'm sure you're gonna be on sometime soon, whatever it is here. So again, thank you.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Again, I want to thank Rachel so much for coming on. We have a couple more announcements. Make sure you guys check out the Mary Poppins with myself and Rachel. It was really fucking good. Chris has some opinions on it. That's all I'm gonna say. He just has some opinions on it. But Rachel and I absolutely adore the soundtrack, and we adore the movie. So make sure you guys check that out. It was a really good time. Just literally just type in Mary Poppins Suddenly soundtracks, and I'm sure it will pop up for you guys. Secondly, check out all of the past content we had. First episode, freaking PJ Campbell himself. Second episode, Jacob London in the wretched past of a YouTube channel that I don't speak of anymore. Episode 3, Late to the Party, where it literally became a how to do YouTube video. Fucking great. Episode 4, I had Abby Friel on. It's always good to talk to someone my age in this community, because I guess I am the boomer zoomer, as I like to call myself. And then also episode 5, we have Pat Hogan, which, dude, that guy is one hell of a filmmaker. He's one hell of an actor too. Like, that man's can act. And then also we just had Rachel on. And then next week could be the one I am most intrigued about. Jonathan Youngblood is a community leader. When it came to the Facebook group, the one of the biggest movie Facebook groups of all time, Movie Talk by Movie Fans. And if you know about that place, it is, and he'll say this himself, it is a dark, weird group that existed, but he did everything that he could to keep it alive. And we're going to talk about everything community next week, and I'm so excited. I love Johnny, and we have a very fun relationship. So last but not least, Ryan John Smith continues. We're watching fucking Looper on May 15th. I need to rewatch the movie before we see it, so I'm not like confused on what the hell is going on. And then Smash League starts again. Family game night Smash League. It's a real freaking thing, y'all. It's a passion. I don't know why I'm passionate about it, but I am. So make sure you guys check it out. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. This show is growing, it's expanding. The guests are getting more intriguing as time goes on. I think it's just because the interview style adjusts. It's not a guest thing. It's rather just like my excitement for the show and how it's growing and how it's continuing to grow is, I think, part of that. And also the views keep coming in too, stronger and hotter, and I thoroughly appreciate it. Like, it's consistent viewership. Like the Pat Hogue video had like 11 likes and fucking blew my mind. So make sure you guys do like and subscribe. Again, shout out to Ferris for $10 today. Really coming in clutch with the Streamlabs. Thoroughly appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Be good. Follow me at Evan DeGraff Live on Twitter. I'm not going to do anything. Whoa, we have one more. Michael K., I nearly skipped out on you. I'm awful. $12. He said, another fantastic interview. Keep it up. Dude, Michael, you know you're goated. I definitely I'm going to be very interested to see you in the comments next week when it comes to Jonathan's interview, because I know you're close with him. So it'll be really Chris also wants me to promote top 10 villain songs in film, which is tomorrow, live at 10 p.m. EST. I think it's live. Christopher, is it live? Chris, yeah, it's live. He wouldn't go on mic. Fucking coward. Anyways, thank you guys so much for coming. I thoroughly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys later next week on Famous Last Words.